My deadbeat father told me that I was not his daughter anymore. Now he expects to walk me down the aisle, so I told him that only family is invited. When I was 6 years old, my parents got divorced after my dad cheated on my mom with my stepmother. After that, I spent most of my time with my mom, but during holidays and vacations I stayed with my dad. When I was 8, my half-brother Jake was born, and whenever I was with my dad, I was forced to take care of him. When I started high school, I had to move in with my dad because my mom had to move abroad for work. This period was one of the hardest of my life. My stepmother wasn't a bad person. She tried to include me in things, but she was very submissive to my father.
As for my dad, he always treated me like an extra in the house, someone who didn't really belong there. I was constantly responsible for taking care of Jake, and whenever we went out, he would only take my stepmother and Jake, never inviting me. One of the most painful experiences happened when I was 14. My dad announced that the whole family was going to Disney for vacation. But the day before the trip, he told me he wanted it to be a family moment, their first big trip with Jake, so I was left home alone. This had already become a pattern. Trips to the beach, zoos, or other outings always included just my stepmother and Jake, while I was left behind. My dad didn't like me going out with friends or inviting them over. He said teenagers together only cause trouble. And because he was controlling, he would call the house phone at random times to check if I was home. He also had a trusted neighbor who would keep an eye on me to make sure I didn't have any visitors. When I turned 16, living with him, the feeling of being an extra only got worse. Everything I had experienced during vacations, the exclusion and sense of abandonment became part of my daily life. Things came to a head when I turned 18. My dad got a promotion at work and decided to take a family trip to Europe. Since it was my last year of high school, I was excited, thinking I'd finally be included. But then he told me he didn't have enough money for a trip for 4, so it would just be to celebrate Jake's 10th birthday. I had to stay home. That's when I snapped. I told him he was being unfair and that he shouldn't have given me false hope. I explained how I'd felt over the past years, and he called me ungrateful and spoiled, saying that I lived with him rent-free. The argument escalated, and he kicked me out of the house, saying I was no longer part of the family and not even his daughter. He literally threw me out and tossed my things onto the sidewalk. Luckily, a friend lived nearby and I stayed at her place that night. The next day I went back to see if my dad had calmed down, but I found my things still on the sidewalk, some even in the trash. My stepmother had kindly saved a few items for me and handed them over. After that, my dad never reached out, except to yell at me a month later when my mom stopped sending him money. A few months later, I got into an engineering program in another state, where I met my now fiancé Mark. He was a senior, and we soon connected, realizing we had a lot in common. We started dating, graduated, and now work in the same field, though at different companies. A few months ago, Mark proposed, and I happily said yes.